Ecocity design, your passive solar on the south, and then it's and then maybe like dwelling terraces on top of that. Yep.
When you're talking tall, you're talking maybe...
Do ancient forest surveys, and our slogan is, if you're not forest, you're against it. And to me, one of the first steps is to take urban areas and start defining where we create forest again. Not just in the sense of a park, or even in the sense of a space for trees, but a forest is a habitat for the natural community. And the first thing we need to do is to re-engage with nature. And to do that, we need to create communities for nature next to our own communities again, and negotiate these relationships. And so the way to do this is, there's what's called the urban forestry movement, but I prefer the terminology community forestry. So that each community should look at how to recreate forest landscapes in their own communities again, and begin to invite nature to participate in their own neighborhoods once again. Even before we start deciding where to put our structures, we should first start figuring out where to put nature back in our cities again.
Right, and one way to do that is to find the lowest density, most costly infrastructure areas, like suburbs,
waterways,
like suburbs where there's like maybe 5-acre parcels, you know, places like that, and so starting there, maybe you start encouraging farming in that area, and then gradually, as the housing stock decays, you're kind of withdrawing from the suburbs, and you're probably going to be recycling a lot of those materials to build this. So it's like a multi-pronged approach. You're densifying and withdrawing at the same time, and while you're withdrawing, you're encouraging developers to do deconstruction and ecosystem restoration, creating community gardens or farms, things of that nature. So, yep.
Is this viewed as something where land would be more community owned and land trusts within this urban area, or?
I think it needs to be a diversity of structures. We definitely have to encourage private development that is good and positive for the community. That historically, a lot of the great grand buildings that we have that are you know, assets to the community were built by private development, and so that's going to continue. But we also need to band together to form cooperative businesses, local developers that know the needs of the community, that maybe know how to set up a community land trust type system, and also just like a relaxation of private property. You know, it's a totally different mindset, and you know, I think it's a transition, a paradigm shift to a different sort of culture that's maybe not oriented towards private property, not communism or anything like that.
And we have something in New York State that's very unique. We have in our state constitution a requirement that certain lands will be kept forever wild. That's the Adirondack Preserve. And to me, if we're looking at the radical transformation we need to make in our culture, every community should look at its land resources and designate which areas should be kept forever wild, and set those into some kind of permanent charter document like the New York State Constitution.
Yeah, and if we're going to actually have a positive effect on the environment and be able to bring back species that are like on the brink, we're really going to need to withdraw significantly from our current footprint, 50 to 75%. That's a lot, and rather than highways dividing up the whole landscape, we're going to need to find ways to, you know, have a similar effect with wildlife corridors. There's this whole idea of the Buffalo Commons, which is basically the whole Great Plains used to be common land, and the Great Plains especially are a terrible place to build settlements. It's like there's been boom and bust cycles throughout American history of where, you know, there's like the cattle boom and then it busts. You know, there's the land skinners boom and bust. You know, that's just the history of the area. And so it's been throwing good money after bad in this constant cycle, and they're still doing it. Like,
well, living out there among, right on the edge of the Buffalo Commons, what should be that, what's really perplexing is many of the people who support keeping things the way they are not doing well. You know, so the ranks are thinning every year, the ranks of the people who are living out on this unviable farmland. But yeah, they still want it, this private thing, and any suggestion, especially by somebody from the east, that they turn it into a Buffalo Commons is just absolute heresy. And it's very perplexing because they are the ones that are suffering the most from the current system.
yeah, but it's like that ecosystem in particular is totally dependent on the buffalo and fire in order to like preserve that level of biodiversity that was there before white settlement.
Yeah.
So,
Where is that, Buffalo Commons?
North Dakota and part of South Dakota is what's proposed. There's a little chunk of Wyoming and another chunk of Montana that could probably go into
but
it.
really, it goes like all the way from Texas to Canada.
Yeah, well, the old days, I mean, it was literally from the forest belt of Saskatchewan all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico.
And from Ohio all the way to.
Well, not Ohio. More like western Iowa, basically to the Front Range.
Right. But yeah. What were you gonna say about that?
Yeah, I've just been contemplating the picture there in terms of adaptability to change. This whole issue of local economy that empowers people to relearn how to be producers. When your starting point is consumer culture, and what we see in the typical urban renewal projects is everything is oriented towards just creating more and more sophisticated ways for cities to become these centers of celebrating consumption. But what you end up with is, and this comes in with the context of energy descent, that the existing structures become barriers to being able to adapt to change. And I'm just wondering